You can share it.
It says you cannot start screen share while the other participant is sharing.
Sound. There you go. Okay, you got it.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. Let's make sure I got this right one. So can y'all see my screen? Okay, great. Thank you, Bill. So I know the topic was get motivated to do your job search, but that's really the geeky version of my talk is using design thinking and behavior science for your job search. And so I am going about that because, let's see. So just a little bit about myself. I am a Tiny Habits certified coach, and I got that because I am interested in behavior change, specifically how to change my own behavior, but it gives you an understanding of other people's behaviors as well. In addition to my other degrees, I also have a certificate of business excellence in product management from UC Berkeley. So I'm also taking a product management approach to this, to my work. And so what I've done for my own career transition is to use behavior design in creating products. And I think of the job search as you are the product, right? I am the product. We have to figure out what our needs are and what we can provide to our audience. So I want to present this talk to you because we've had several speakers in the recent past tell us about the books Designing Your Life and also by Tiny Habits. And I'm using both of these in designing my career going forward. So Design Your Life is a method to kind of tell you what to pursue. And I use Tiny Habits to execute those ideas. So a little bit about Bill Burnett and Dave Evans. Actually, all these folks are from Stanford. Bill Burnett and Dave Evans, they actually have mechanical engineer backgrounds. They're part of the design school, and they teach the course Designing Your Life at Stanford. There is also a public version of Designing Your Life, so I'll tell you more about that later. Dr. BJ Fogg is a behavioral scientist at Stanford. He's also written the book Tiny Habits, which is a New York Times bestseller. So here's the agenda for today. We're going to talk about how do you decide what career or job to pursue. And then, it can be quite overwhelming. So where do you start in the process? And then how do you get and stay motivated to do your job search? Right. So I'm taking an approach of design thinking. So if you're trying to think of what do you want to be when you grow up, I'm using design thinking. And if you're into business, there's a specific way of designing products, right? And you do have to have, this is important to know what you want to do because this will drive the why you're going to do your job search, and what specifically you are applying to. So again, this is Designing Your Life. There's two books. There's one called Designing Your Life, which was the first book. And then since then, Bill Burnett and Dave Evans have written Designing Your Work Life. So that is specific to your career. They realize that just because your dream job might be, becoming a 747 pilot at this age, you might not be able to do that, or, whatever, we still have mortgages and different things like that. So Designing Your Life looks at where you are right now and helps you still figure out how to create happiness. So even if you're in a current role and you're not specifically looking for a job, there might be aspects of it where you're not crazy about, like, I don't know, maybe your boss isn't supportive. Well, they also teach you what's important to you. And you can still design, maybe your boss doesn't give you a lot of feedback. Well, you can still find ways to find feedback from your peers or something else. So you can still design your current role to better fit your interests. And they do teach this. Besides these books, they do have workshops for this. I have attended the Design Your Life for Women workshop. They also have an online class. They also have Design Your Life life coaches. I would suggest doing this with other people. And it's because it's a much more collaborative approach. You get to talk to people and well, they kind of hold you accountable for one thing, but it's a lot more fun. You generate a lot more ideas. And as a designer, that's what you want. You're trying to think of different ideas. So then once you figure out why why you want to work, what's driving you, then you have to figure out, okay, the job search is a really big thing. Where are you going to start? I hear people, it's like, do you update your resume? Do you update LinkedIn? Where do you start? So I am taking a tiny habits approach. So when you have the designing mindset, designers are prone to taking action. If it is not actionable, it is not a problem to be solved. All right, so tiny habits. So we're going to approach this from a tiny habits standpoint. Tiny Habits is a book. There's also a website called Tiny Habits. And there's also a free 5-day program where you learn more about tiny habits. And it's in tiny steps. We're talking, the 5-day program is you watch like 30 minutes of videos, and then you spend 3 minutes a day practicing your tiny habits. So the mentality is small changes, and you're building success momentum, because that's important. Because you really do want to feel successful. And the more you feel successful, the more you'll do something. So the next step is, if you're trying to think of what to do for your job search, here's the audience participation time. Good morning, everyone. You are going to help each other think of, if you had a magic wand, what specific behaviors will help you with your job search? And usually you can do this with I recommend you can do this, like just cut up a piece of paper to do this. Or I actually recommend Post-it notes and colorful Post-it notes. And the reason why you want to use colorful Post-it notes is because we're trying to create positive emotions. So the more positive, because emotions create habits. So the more positive, more colorful, more fun it is, the more likely you'll do something. Certainly you can cut up a piece of paper and do this exercise, but it's just not going to be as pretty. But that's also very doable. And so you don't have to go buy Post-it notes. So now I'd love to open up the audience and ask for ideas on how can you work on your job search? What are certain things? Does anyone have suggestions they want to share? Or you can put in the chat, or you can just unmute yourself and share your ideas, please.
Hey, I'm Alan LeClaire, and I see everyone. My thing in life is to always explore the things that I find interesting. And what I've done over this time is I found varying levels of interest in things. And then as I explore those things, I find they often overlap with other areas, right? So I started in psychology. I was going to be a psychologist, but I found that I was going to be pretty introverted, but I still love the way people thought. And so then I found that, well, working with business people, there is a huge amount of psychology, understanding how they think, understand how the market thinks and why the market likes their products. So that was how I kind of spun into business. And from there I landed in commercial banking, doing loans for corporations. And then, you know, the next caveat is I've always loved tech and the innovators of the world and finding better ways to do things to help people. And so from this, I've kind of spun into fintech, but that's hopefully a succinct enough answer to your question about how to find things. My problem has always been, I've wanted to do too many. There's so many things that I'm interested in that I get spread too thin.
Got it. So tell me, what are some of the things that you're interested in?
Well, you know, the latest thing has been understanding human behavior. So humans often will say one thing, but actually do another and continue to remain completely in the dark, that their position is actually very different from what they think it is. And so we have this new tool called the internet and all of this data out there in the world that we can capture and use to help us make better decisions. And so my last job at Bitvor is a company that scraped all of the greater data universe and sorted that down by company, and then said, hey, we can see what this company is actually doing in the market by what people are saying about them, by the articles being written, by the behavior of the executives, right? They say that they're all inclusive, but we found out there's a sexual discrimination lawsuit against the CEO, you know, so not quite as pretty as they like to make it out to be. So this kind of thing has captured my attention recently, using this massive pool of big data to help us as people make better decisions. That's my latest.
Great. So, but I'd like to be a little bit more specific, like in your career search or in your career discovery process. Do you read certain websites? Do you?
Well, yeah, right now I'm looking for work. So I'm out combing, you know, the job boards and looking at jobs that have typically titles of something like customer success, working with people in the product. I've targeted kind of my top 10 companies. You know, a good example is Stripe. They use financial data and you know, it's the combination of tech and financial services that turns my interest. And I know when I'm going down that path with a company, if it's a good fit or not, because I'll feel it right away when I read the mission statement. I'll have an idea like, this is something I can get behind. This is something that piques my thoughts. Whereas another is like, you know, that's a great field and I know a lot of people that are crazy about it, but I just have no interest in it. You know what I mean? So I know kind of directionally which way to go there.
Great. So some of the things you mentioned are list your target companies. Right?
Yeah.
So that could be one action item.
Yeah.
So we want to be as specific as possible because we're looking for specific behaviors.
Okay.
So when you say look at job boards, then it may be write down on a piece of paper, you know, look at the LinkedIn job board.
Right.
Versus look
at specific. Yeah.
Look at Indeed. Okay,
yeah.
So that's another one.
Yeah, actually, that's a good idea. I haven't looked at Indeed in a while.
Okay. And so
can I say something?
Please do.
The only thing I found with the LinkedIn job boards is that sometimes they're putting a job on the job board that they already have a lot of internal candidates interested on. And so a lot of it is if you're networking with people and they're saying, I know someone that has a job, I feel like LinkedIn, those job boards are so hit and miss. And even if the job is so interesting, I feel like it's already too late when it's on LinkedIn job boards. Not always. And I think LinkedIn is a great tool to use, but I've been burned by that so many times. So like, I would definitely put networking way above the LinkedIn job boards.
So when you say networking, what do you mean?
Like these, like, I feel like the boot camp, I feel like talking to people, setting up coffees, asking how you can help them. I feel like attending, like find a couple of network groups that are interesting to you, either in your field or just on finding a job in general, and just keep attending and keep putting your name out there and keep having, now with us being in such a virtual environment, you can do a couple of networking groups a day if you're in transition, because you don't have to drive and go anywhere.
Right, right.
Putting your name out there and talking to people. It's really hard. It's a full-time job, but I almost feel like that's going to, at least so far, it seems like it's giving me the most bang for my buck. Sorry to interrupt.
No, you brought a very good point, and I'll bring that point up later on the different job boards. So thank you for sharing that. But you've also shared a couple of other ideas. So you've said, attend our boot camp, right? Coffees. You've also said, set up different coffees. So yeah, on this little tab of paper, you might specify who you're having coffee with. And I'll tell you why in a little bit, okay? So each tab of paper is a task that is actionable. You don't want to be just set up a coffee, because then you set up a coffee, then you have to think about, who am I going to set up coffee with? You want to write down, set up a coffee with like a specific person. And I'll tell you why a little later. And so what other ideas do people have?
Well, for the LinkedIn part, there are some jobs, and what I've noticed is that when I see something interesting in LinkedIn, oftentimes in the field that I am, I have at least a number of second-degree connections in the company. It's very rarely that I don't have somebody, which means that then I'm starting to go over the people that connect us and find a way to talk to somebody before or while I am looking into that job. And that has a few times that has ended up, or I found a possibility to have an interview with that. Right. So that's been helpful. I've also just cold applied and ended up having conversations. So it's not totally hopeless, but yes, it is a bit like a black hole where everything disappears.
Right. So that's one little tab, is to email your second degree connections. And you want to state who that is. Also, Sylvie, thank you so much for sharing. You could just outright email people that you don't have any connections, right? So that could be another tab. And you want to be very specific. So your idea, so what else? You guys are creative here. I know it's 8 a.m. I have to wake up and think. So you guys help me out here. What other things like you have to do your job search? Like get a professional headshot. Oh yeah. Right?
Anna.
Go ahead.
One of the things, sorry to interrupt, but
no,
I found that it's beneficial. You mentioned it briefly, but the power of weak connections, from the I forget the name of the book actually from years ago, but the idea that oftentimes we resign ourselves to networking people that we have a high overlap with. Mm. And I find that when you do see someone that you're not even connected with, but you have genuine interest and it's authentic, that you feel you'd be a good fit. I mean, a lot of the times, if you come at them genuinely and say, my name's Rob, I'm very interested in meeting you because I want to hear your feedback on the role, as opposed to just saying, hey, please get me in, right?
Right.
You work there, you're in a position of authority. I mean, obviously worded more eloquently, but they're in a position of potential authority. You're interested in their view to qualify them rather than just throw it in there, and then ask them, any one or two pointed questions. It's that weak link, because as you network with someone you don't really know, you're going to expand your real network potentially, and then it may have an unintended positive consequence down the road. And that's what I've tried to do effectively in the past, unless some person is on LinkedIn and doesn't, they might not have their last name displayed, or you can't connect to them directly. But, I applied with Ingram Micro 6 years ago for a role. Now they're emailing me saying they're looking for 60 people, and I hadn't talked to them in years. So that's just my 2 cents on something that you could do to expand your horizons.
Perfect. And that's what I want. I want y'all to generate different ideas, so you guys do have ideas to share with each other. Rob, thank you very much. So that is kind of like, is that informational interviewing, basically? Yeah. So that's a great idea. So if you could also do informational interviews, and maybe get a list of informational interview questions if you're not familiar with that, right? So what other ideas do you guys think?
I would add on to that remember, these are all relationships. So it's not the coffee and then you're gone, or the informational interview and then you're gone. If there's a connection, and I like the explanation of, it has to be coming from a genuine place. But if there's a genuine connection and a real interest, keep going back to that person, not in a demanding way, but whatever, a natural conversation would be. Because I talked to somebody a year ago, and they wanted to bring me in as a contractor, and it just didn't work at that time. And then they called back in August, and I've been, sort of checking in. Hey, wanted to see how your project was going. I have an idea. I had a thought. Are you doing this? Whatever it was. And they called back this August and said, we think we're really ready to create this position. That's not actually going to work, but still someday it will, right? They're not quite ready, but it's all a relationship. And somebody earlier had said, maybe the job doesn't exist yet, right? So that lets you help shape that too, but it does have to be I love that it has to be coming from a place of genuine interest and desire to be involved, not a, hey, hire me, I need money.
Right. And people need to know you, and not just you knowing them. Right.
And that conversation over time gives them a chance to get to know you and who you really are and what you'll bring.
So Liz, what are some of the ideas? How have you kept up with, how have you built your relationships?
Not as well as I'd like, but
what would you like to do? How's that?
I keep a list of people that I'm sort of in conversation with, because I find I forget, right? It's like the friend that I mean to talk to, and then you look up and you're like, oh, we've been saying we'd have coffee for 2 years. But a list of people that I sort of scan at least once a week and go, should I be in touch with these people? Or it triggers oh, right, I saw that article, or I talked to this other person, or, you might find that you're talking to people you want to connect. So it's like like a tickle file kind of thing, which sounds weird when I'm talking about actual people, but
no, that's great. So do you just send them articles? What specifically do you do to keep up the relationship?
It varies for me. So sometimes it's sending an article, sometimes it's just checking in and saying, if we have a really good relationship, hey, you were talking about creating that position. Well, the thing I'm thinking of right now was I just applied for this other role. They have a great description. I strip out the company name, but want to share it with you because it sounds like maybe it's what you're looking for. And if it's useful as you think about your role, great. And then that's it. And I may not talk to them for another 2 months. Somebody else, we'd had a really good conversation there. Also, I tend to be interviewing for roles that are getting created.
Oh.
So this was with a startup, and they have a bunch of people to hire and they can't figure out their sequencing of hiring. Mm-hmm. And so I said, while you're thinking about it, here's just a quick recap of the 5 things we talked about that we thought this role needed to do out of the gate. So,
great. So
make sure, I would make sure somebody's doing this while you're figuring out what the role is and what you're hiring. And it was really simple. It was like, nobody's posted on your blog in 6 months. So make sure somebody's actually blogging, not daily, but more than every 6 months. Do, that kind of thing. And here's a company that should have you listed in their sources on their site. It's all stuff that I'm coming across naturally anyway, as I do reading.
Uh-huh.
So it could be any of that.
I love how you're trying to help them solve their problems, and it could be they haven't thought of it or they haven't had time to implement it. And
I think often it's time, right? And when you're on the other side of it, I mean, that's what I keep thinking about, is how much time it took to hire people.
Okay, we're on video.
Sorry.
Have a great day.
Benny said thank you for the call last night. It was wonderful to wake up to. Thank you for not telling me.
Thank you, everyone.
You were on the phone with Dave.
Sharing or thanks. Darn, I wanted to hear what was going on. But Liz, thank you for sharing.
Sure.
No, that I'm actually a little more curious. How have you found unlisted jobs?
That's a good question. It's not easy. Talking to people, I think most of the things that are really good, let me think about that. The things that have come closest to working have all come through somebody I know who knows I'm looking. So you have to tell everybody that you're looking. And somebody in the comments said, your hairstylist, your whoever, everybody knows people. They have then either said, hey, I know somebody you should talk to, and connected us, or I have gotten pinged through LinkedIn on so-and-so recommended I get in touch with you. This is what I'm trying to do.
Nice.
Would you, be interested in talking? And some of it's really early, and like, we think we need somebody to do this. We're not really sure what that's called. And some of it's people I used to work with who are creating roles at their company. And sometimes, I talked to a guy recently who it's a role, it's not, excuse me, not going to work for me at all, because he's taking part of what I do and he's combining it with something I don't ever want to do. But he wanted to know if that was realistic.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so we talked for 40 minutes, and he's like, that's great. Would you mind reading the job description when I have it? And then he's, off, but he may talk to somebody else at some other discussion and say, I know somebody who'd be really good at this for you.
Right. So, that's great. So you're helping them define their needs and sharing what you can offer. So thank you so much. I see now that there's a whole bunch of folks stuff in the chat, and I'm not great at reading chat and talking at the same time. So if you want to unmute yourself and share some ideas, that would be great. And we're here to, you're here to share, but you're sharing to help other, our boot camp alumni here. So please, what are your thoughts?
Well, Anna, I wanted to say, don't disqualify yourself.
Thank you.
Where's your mindset? And what I mean by that, you go through interviews and you don't get the job. Well, that lingers in the back of your mind, and that can be negative. Look at the interview. What do you think you did well? Where do you think you need to improve? And keep it positive. So what I mean by don't disqualify yourself, sometimes I think people look at roles, they think it would be good for them, and then their self-talk talks them out of applying or starting to try to network with that company to get an introduction, right? Mm-hmm. And I think we forget that so much.
No, that's great. And you're right. It is a mentality, and it's actually a habit to think of okay, maybe, I'm not skilled enough, or I'm too old. Well, then don't apply to jobs that apply to jobs that use your benefits. You apply to jobs that that value your experience and put you at advantage. So thank you. It is a mindset. It's a practice on the mindset too. So do we have other ideas? Because I haven't read the chat. So please feel free to open up and share.
So I would say, referring a little bit to the, not previous, but the speaker before that, this sort of paying it forward, helping others, be truly a go-giver. I have an example right now is that it must have been 18 months ago, I helped a startup just because I wanted to help them. And I helped the founder, the CEO, with some problems they were having. And since then they pivoted. We spoke about, possible role already earlier, it didn't happen. Now they pivoted, and now we are, in fact, I'm talking with the VC that is funding them about a role of taking over as a CEO. Maybe, we're kind of like looking into that. So fantastic. May happen, may not happen, but it all started me seeing somebody in trouble and having coffee with her and, getting to know her and helping her.
And you also volunteered to do a project, which shows off your skills too. So that can be another little tab. All right. Anything else? So some of the other ideas I have, I think you have a number of tabs here. So, the little tab is that be very specific. You are looking, like for the job boards, you would put down, look at Indeed, look at LinkedIn, look at Craigslist, or I don't know, Monster or whatever. And the reason so this is like magic wand, anything goes, so you come up with your ideas. Now, the next step is called focus mapping. Did that work? No. It's called focus mapping, and it's from the book Tiny Habits. And so what you're going to do is you're going to decide what of these little stickers are going to have a high impact on your job search and what you can get yourself to do. Right? So just because that would be very effective doesn't mean that you can get yourself to do it. And if you're not going to get yourself to do it, there's no point in just torturing yourself. So that's why I have you write little pink Post-it notes or colorful Post-it notes just to make it more fun. As I said, you can do this with just pieces of paper. And so on this chart here, the way it works is that you're going to take your Post-it notes and you're going to put them on the chart. You're going to look at the y-axis first, and you're going to decide what is going to be very effective in helping you with your job search. And so that's why I said, even though LinkedIn isn't great, you can still decide, all right, I don't know, and whatever. Indeed is more effective at finding a job than LinkedIn. And so you're going to put all of these on the board. And you're just going to be looking at the y-axis first of what is effective. Like you're having going to boot camp coffee is probably pretty effective because you're talking to people, right? So you're going to put all these little Post-its on the board. So like maybe getting a headshot. Yeah, it's effective, but it's not as effective as attending boot camp coffee, right? You're going to decide for yourself, for your own job search and for your own style, what is effective for you. So after you've done that, you know, and you've got a whole slew of little Post-it notes, your next step is to move them left and right. They don't go up and down anymore. You've already decided what's going to be effective. Your next step is left and right. Left is no, I can't get myself to do this behavior. Or yes, I can get myself to do this behavior. And you just move these little Post-it notes left and right. Okay. So maybe boot camp. Yeah, I can get myself to do that. Make an interview list. Okay, I can get myself to do that. Actually, that's probably higher than this one. Anyways. So, or volunteer, you know, yeah, I can get myself to that. So you have all these little Post-it notes all over the place, right? Now, by looking at all your notes, the top right corner is the things that are going to be the most effective in your job search and the stuff that you can get that you want to do the most. And this is where you start. This is where you start your job search. Focus on the highest impact things that you can do. Now, after you've completed these, you also have Post-its, tasks that are on the left-hand side, which are, they're very effective, but you can't get yourself to do. And in the book, Tiny Habits, it does share how you can make them easier to do, like make them by increasing the ability to do it. Okay. All right. And then even when you've got these very effective habits, then you have to, how do you get motivated to do your job search? Just because you know what to do now, how do you still, you know, get motivated? Don't depend on motivation, make it a habit, because then you don't have to think about it. And the tiny habit approach is, a tiny habit is something that takes 30 seconds or less to do and is super easy to do. Okay, there's actually a lot of nuances involved in creating the habits that I'm not able to, I don't think we're gonna have the time today. I can tell you more about that later. But in a nutshell, what you're doing is you take an existing habit and you pair it with your new habit. For instance, I have a habit of, after I turn off my laptop at the end of the day, I pick one task to work on in the next day in the morning. And so then I celebrate that I'm working on creating my future. And an important part is to celebrate. And it's because you want to wire in the behavior and you're wiring the good feelings of, you know, it's only 30 seconds. It takes you, if you have to think about it, it's like, it takes you longer to think about it than just to do it. So that's why you want to do 30 seconds and do celebrate. And so, yeah, and then basically that's it. You can celebrate by, a lot of people have trouble celebrating. You can think of when you see a goal at a football game or a soccer game, you know, you cheer for your teams. this is a way for you to cheer for yourself, or even just as simple as giving yourself a high five. Mel Robbins has just issued the book called The High Five Habit. Yeah. And you just give yourself a high five in the mirror, because we're so used to cheering for others that it's really important to cheer for yourself. So that's it. Just again, reiterating what we've discussed. We did talk about the designing your work life, and we talked about tiny habits. And if you want to learn specifically how to create tiny habits, I am a certified tiny habits coach, and you're welcome to email me. You can also go to the Tiny Habits website to sign up for a free 5-day program. It's the same thing. You just get a random coach. I tend to walk through my students personally before it, because it's just a little easier when you're going to watch videos, then you can figure it out, but then it's just easier to talk to someone. It's like, oh, this is the habit I'm thinking. How does this work? So
Anna, I love this. And I really liked that chart, the focus mapping chart. And I signed up for a free Tiny Habits 5-day course, but it didn't work for me. I couldn't figure out a tiny enough habit. And it's like, it hurt my brain. But
that's why I offer to talk to people in person first.
See, that's the thing. If I had talked to somebody in advance, I probably would have gone through the 5 days. And so that poor coach was a little frustrated with me. But so I like how you talked about you set it up on the vertical axis, and then you move it to the right or to the left. And, this works with so much, right? It's amazing.
Oh yeah. I mean, I do this now with all the different projects that I have. Even, like my aspiration may be, how am I going to have a great day? And there's just like so many things on my to-do list, right? So then I just use this chart of figuring out, okay, what's going to be effective? What can I really get myself to do? If I can't get myself to do, I really just need to outsource it and just, stop creating some mental frustration there.
That's brilliant. And I've listened to BJ Fogg's some of YouTubes and I think I even bought his book and I read part of it. But some great ideas. The whole thought about creating these little tiny steps that move you forward, because we have a tendency to think that everything is overwhelming. So you've done a really fantastic job. Okay, we have a few minutes. If you have a question, either put it in the chat or unmute yourself and ask the question. We want to get as many in as possible. I've been scanning the chat, don't see a whole lot of questions. So feel free to unmute yourself and ask.
Yeah, be curious.
I have a question. If you say something is very effective and you don't want to do it, but it's not, say it's follow up with, say you have 10 people to follow up with, from a few calls. How do you, that's more than a 30-second follow-up. How do you organize and attach it to habits when it's going to be more than a 30-second task, if you will?
Right. So good question. So to follow up with people, is that something you want to do once a week, or do you want to do a little bit every day? What are your thoughts?
A prompt follow-up, so within a day.
Oh, okay. Okay. So that's something you'd want to set up a daily habit for. So what you do is find an existing habit that you do every day. And we have such as getting out of bed is a daily habit, right? Or having coffee. If you don't eat breakfast, most people will at least have lunch. You attach it to something with the same frequency. you preferably do it in the same place as your existing habit. So let's say if you want to follow up with people, that sounds like you might want, is that something you would do at your desk or?
Yes.
Yeah. So is there, so at your desk, maybe you turn on your computer every day or at least sit at your desk. How's that? Well, let's put sit at your desk. We don't know what people can leave their computers on. So you can have a habit of, after I sit at my desk, I will pick one person to email. Now, the habit itself is there's something called a starter step. So if it is something difficult, you just start it, which is maybe picking the person that you want to follow up with. And then you just celebrate for actually working on that. Whether or not you email the person or what you want to do, following that would be extra credit. So if you email the person or do something else, then you celebrate extra for doing that as well. But your starter step is, after you sit at your desk, you're going to pick one person to follow up with.
Bill added in the chat, you must have identified the first steps to overcome the resistance to change.
So for the habits, it's depending less on motivation, because I mean, if you think it's a habit, you don't have to think about it. So like brushing your teeth. Well, hopefully brushing your teeth is everyone's habit. You know, you don't think about it anymore, right? You're just kind of like, oh, just go to the bathroom and just unscrew the cap and just do it. So that's the idea of a habit. And that's what I like about habits, is because it's reducing the mental load. You don't have to think about it. And the tiny approach makes it easier to not think about it.
So in the other example of calling 30 people every day or whatever, you wouldn't say 30 people. Would you say specifically the names? Let me call this person, this person, this person, and put each one on a Post-it. I love that Post-it idea. I think that could really get me to do the things I'm supposed to do every day.
Yeah, absolutely. Put each person on a Post-it, because you can still rank them who is the most effective at reaching your goal. And that's how you decide who you call first. And you know, and who do you want to call for, you know, easier to talk with. So the people in your top upright quadrant are still, yeah, I can call them. And yeah.
Okay, I like this. And so maybe if all of us just say, okay, I'm going to, you know, reach out to one person from this bootcamp coffee, and that could be great. And so somebody put in Franklin training, if you repeat something for 21 days, it will become a habit. Is that discussed?
Yes. BJ Fogg does not agree with that.
Okay.
It's because it depends on the habit. If you think about your phone, right? How long did it take for you to develop a habit of checking your phone when a little light blinks? You know, so
immediately.
Right? So it did not take 21 days, it did not take 30 days. It really depends on what it is.
It might take 21 days to not check it.
Yes.
The original habit book by David Duhigg, there's like keystone habits, where like if you were a smoker, even if you haven't smoked for like 20 years, it's like there's certain things you can start up again. But then in the Atomic Habits, it also talks about, you know, if you're going to exercise, just say you're going to do it for 5 minutes and leave after those 5 minutes. And then after a while, it's like, okay, I really want to go to 10 minutes or 15 minutes. So the things that are really hard to do, if you're going to, don't say I'm going to go work out for an hour a day, or I'm going to make 30 calls. I'm just going to do one. And even if I want to do more, I'm only going to do one, and then work up to it. So, because sometimes things are super overwhelming.
Right. And in the tiny habits, your goal does not increase. So for instance, if you have a goal of running, your goal is to put on your shoes. Every day is just to put on your shoes. And if you actually run, that's a bonus. But your goal itself is to put on your shoes. And the reason why I like Tiny Habits is because those other books are fabulous. BJ Fogg is a Stanford behavioral scientist. And so that's why I like BJ Fogg.
Well, and I think when you say that, it's like, if you're going to put on your shoes, then you're going to go for a run.
Right? Exactly. It's like, oh.
So I like that idea. So right now, what I'm trying to do, especially when I'm here in the city, it's like, just put the tennis shoes right next to my bed. And then, you know, if I'm looking at them, I'm going to put them on, and then I'm going to go for my walk first thing in the morning.
So what you find, Christy, is your also location is very important. So it's top of mind. And so that's how you're increasing your ability to do the habit as well.
Yeah. Okay, we're out of time. Anna, this has been fantastic. And what you don't know is that this has spurred a little discussion in the chat about having a bootcamp coffee that's focused on stuff like this and other discussions. So you're going to be tapped to come back again, and I think it could be really fun to to have people share what's working and see how we can make it all a habit. So thank you so much, Anna. Appreciate it, everyone.
I just want to give a high five to everyone out there for showing up this morning. Woohoo! Good job for working on yourself. And your job search is really your future. So thank you so much for sharing.
So thank you. And we have another speaker next week, Matt Ward, who's going to talk about, kind of sales principles that you can apply to job search. So that'll be another fun one. And thank you, everyone. Have a great weekend. Look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you, Anna, from the bottom of my heart. It's so great that you're out here, and I love what you're doing, and I can't wait to hear more of your successes. So awesome job, and bye everyone. Enjoy the weekend.
Bye-bye.